10% of Earth's surface is covered in ice. Antarctica, Greenland, mountain glaciers, massive sheets of ice that have been there for thousands of years. These glaciers contain a total of 26.5 million cubic kilometers of ice. To put that in perspective, enough to cover all of China under 3 kilometers of ice. What if all of it melted? Not gradually, but all at once, as if touched by a magic wand. What would happen? Welcome. This video is a thought experiment, but built on real science, real numbers, and real consequences. First, the biggest player, Antarctica. It holds 90% of all ice on Earth. If Antarctica alone melted, sea levels would rise 58 meters. Greenland ice sheet, 7 more meters. Mountain glaciers, 0.5 meters. Other ice sheets, 0.3 meters. Total, approximately 65 to 70 meters of sea level rise. 70 meters. Let's think about what that number means. The vast majority of the world's 8 billion people live below 70 meters above sea level. At 70 meters of rise, London, New York, Tokyo, Mumbai, Shanghai, Amsterdam, Miami, Istanbul, all go under. Let's begin. Day 1. All glaciers suddenly melted. Trillions of tons of water emptied into the oceans. The oceans don't rise instantly. The water mass is enormous. First, coastal areas begin to flood. Port cities are the first affected. As days pass, the water keeps rising. Evacuations begin. Billions of people are forced to migrate inland. Let's go city by city. Istanbul, one of history's most strategic cities, average elevation around 50 meters. But its low-lying areas, the Golden Horn, the Kadıköy shoreline, Bostancı, are submerged. London, the Thames overflows its flood barriers. Westminster, Canary Wharf, Docklands, all submerged. Only the high hills survive. New York, most of Manhattan sits 10 to 30 meters above sea level. At 70 meters of rise, nearly all of it is gone. Only Washington Heights and some northern hills remain above water. Paris, the Seine bursts its banks. The Louvre area, the surroundings of the Eiffel Tower, low-elevation neighborhoods go under. Montmartre Hill rises like a surviving island. The Netherlands, a country that already lives below sea level, at 70 meters, nearly all of the Netherlands vanishes. Amsterdam, Rotterdam, gone. In Asia, the picture is even grimmer. 80% of Bangladesh submerges. Shanghai, a metropolis of 25 million, disappears entirely. India's coastal cities, Mumbai, Kolkata, are erased. Egypt's Nile Delta, one of the world's most fertile agricultural regions, completely submerged. 40 million people left homeless. What's saved? High-altitude cities are saved. Denver, Nairobi, Addis Ababa, Madrid, Ankara, Mexico City, Swiss cities, they remain above water. Now the numbers. Approximately 40% of the world's population, more than 3 billion people, lives within 100 meters of sea level. At 70 meters of rise, nearly all of those 3 billion people are forced to relocate. The greatest migration in human history. But the physical flooding is just the beginning. The second and far greater crisis, food. Most of the world's most fertile farmland lies along coastlines and river deltas. The Nile Delta, the Mekong Delta, the Mississippi Delta, the Ganges Plain, all submerged. 90% of the world's rice grows on these coastal plains. 60% of wheat, most of its corn. Without these lands, the global population cannot be fed. Can new farmland be found? Theoretically, yes. Russia and Canada's interiors could become arable with rising temperatures, but that takes decades. Third crisis, fresh water. Seems paradoxical. How can there be a water shortage with all this water? But ocean water is salty, and glaciers were the world's largest freshwater reserves. The Himalayan glaciers supply most of the drinking and irrigation water for 2 billion people across South Asia. When these glaciers go, that water goes too. Fourth crisis, climate change accelerates. Glaciers are white. Ice reflects 90% of incoming sunlight back into space. Without that white cover, surfaces absorb the light and heat up even more. This is a positive feedback loop. As ice melts, more warming occurs. More warming causes more melting. A self-reinforcing cycle. Fifth crisis, ocean chemistry changes. With this much freshwater mixing into the oceans, salinity balance is disrupted, ocean currents shift, the Gulf Stream, the current that warms northern Europe, weakens or stops. Northern Europe, Alaska, Britain cool unexpectedly because it was the Gulf Stream providing that warmth. Sixth crisis, ecosystem collapse. Coral reefs are already under stress. The sudden rise in sea level and ocean temperature completely devastates coral ecosystems. Coral reefs are home to 25% of all ocean fish species. When this ecosystem collapses, the fish populations that hundreds of millions of people depend on for protein drop dramatically. Seventh crisis, methane. Permafrost. The frozen soils of Siberia and Canada thaws. Enormous amounts of trapped methane gas are released. Methane is 80 times more powerful than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. This methane release dramatically accelerates climate change. Glacial melt doesn't just raise sea levels, it triggers a climate catastrophe far larger than itself. Eighth crisis, geopolitical reorganization. Territorial losses redraw political boundaries, nations shrink, some disappear entirely. The Maldives, average elevation of 1.5 meters at 70 meters of rise, erased from the map. 500,000 Maldivians become stateless, a country ceases to exist. Wars could break out over water resources. Tensions escalate between major powers over freshwater, farmland, and habitable territory. The concept of climate war becomes real. Something less known. The weight of Antarctica and Greenland's ice is so enormous it presses down on the Earth's crust. When the ice goes, the crust slowly rebounds. This is called isostatic rebound. Now an interesting question, are there any winners? Some regions actually benefit from this scenario. Russia and Canada might appear to win. Arctic shipping routes open with ice melt. Oil and gas reserves in the Arctic become accessible. New farmland emerges. But these partial gains become meaningless in the midst of global chaos. Economic collapse, migration waves, and climate disruption affect every country, including the so-called winners. The truth is, the complete melting of glaciers would take millions of years. But partial melting? That's happening much faster, and it's happening right now. Since 1900, global average temperature has risen by 1.1 degrees. That seems small. But glaciers have responded to that 1.1 degrees dramatically. The Greenland ice sheet is currently losing approximately 280 billion tons of ice per year, and that rate is accelerating. The West Antarctic ice sheet, which alone equals 3 meters of sea rise, is destabilizing. Some scientists warn we may soon cross a point of no return. Today's sea levels are already 20 centimeters higher than in 1900. That seems small, but Miami already floods its streets at high tide. By 2050, sea levels are projected to rise a further 0.3 to 1 meter. That alone affects 1 billion people. No need for the 70 meters of our thought experiment. So what can be done? What tools does humanity have to stop or slow glacial melt? First tool, reduce carbon emissions. The root cause is warming, and the root cause of warming is CO2. The Paris Agreement aims to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. Second tool, coastal protection structures. Spreading the Dutch model across the world. Massive seawalls, pumps, elevated urban infrastructure. Third tool, managed retreat. Rather than trying to save some coastal cities, deliberately and systematically relocating inland. This is called managed retreat. Fourth tool, glacier reflection projects. Scientists are researching speculative engineering solutions, such as laying reflective covers over glaciers or cooling ocean water. The most important truth, this disaster doesn't come suddenly, it comes slowly. And that is both the greatest danger and the greatest opportunity. If 1 degree of warming creates this much impact, what does 2 degrees do? 3 degrees? What determines when glaciers melt is the decisions being made today. Children alive today will see the year 2100. The decisions we make today will determine the sea level in 2100. This isn't an abstract future. This is the future of today's children. Glaciers are not just ice. They are the guardians of the world's climate balance, freshwater reserves, sea level regulators, and archives of millions of years of climate history. 70 meters, a world where the cities most of humanity calls home go under the sea. This scenario is not science fiction, it's just a matter of time. the speed at which the ice melts, that we can determine. Every fraction of a degree matters. Every ton of CO2 not emitted matters. Every renewable energy plant built matters. The difference between 1.5 degrees and 3 degrees is the difference between manageable and catastrophic. The glaciers have been here for millions of years. They watched civilizations rise and fall. Now, for the first time in their history, human decisions will determine their fate and ours.